So there are about 87,000 people in custody. There are.
I'm talking about one prison. I'm just talking about this one prison.
I'm just coming to Wandsworth. In Wandsworth, there are probably about 10,000 or tens of thousands of movements in that period. But the reason why we take it so seriously in terms of what's specifically happening in Wandsworth, that's why I've asked for an additional governor resource to go down. The prison service has arranged for an additional governor resource to go down. That's somebody who has previously been a governor, but also has specific security expertise. Also, out of an abundance of caution, have transferred out around 40 prisoners to other parts of the estate, because we want to get to the bottom of precisely what is going on in that particular prison. So yes, we are looking at it very carefully, and there is an exhaustive inquiry which is underway at the moment, and additional broader resource in that prison.
So let's start, shall we, with the Justice Secretary, Alex Chalk. Thank you for being with us here on Sunday morning.
Thank you for having me.
Now, I want to talk to you in some depth about prisons, but first, there is this really worrying story on the front page of the Sunday Times today about a Chinese spy operating in Parliament with some close ties to very influential MPs. That's a real threat to UK security, isn't it?
Well, let's take it in stages and work out precisely what the nature of this individual was, what he's alleged to have done, and the parliamentary authorities will want to make their inquiries, and indeed other agencies too. But of course, we take this extremely seriously. So the Prime Minister has described China as an epoch-defining challenge. So that means you can't wish China away. It's the world's second biggest economy. It's critically important to whether we are going to defeat climate change, responsible for about 28% of global emissions. We're just 1% and so on. But we have to engage with great caution, and that's the balance that we're striking. And it's why, for example, we take Huawei out of our 5G network. So yes, we should engage, because lives and livelihoods here in the UK depend on what happens in China, but we do so in a calibrated, cautious and careful way.
Should we be engaging? No, because MPs like Ian Duncan-Smith have warned for quite a long time that China is not ever going to talk to the UK, not ever going to work with us in the way that we may well hope. He spoke to Breakfast earlier. Just this is what he had to say.
First of all, I don't think it's a dialogue. I think it's a kind of pathetic monologue. What's actually going on is China is ignoring much of what we say to them. I bet you anything that the Prime Minister, the Chinese Prime Minister he spoke to, will just deny it and say nothing happened. That's what they do all the time. And the other thing is, there was a very good piece written in the Times about a day or two ago by Juliet Samuel, in which she said this idea that somehow Britain is involved in some incredibly balanced dialogue is utter nonsense. It's not a balanced dialogue. It's a one-way attempt to try and look and behave as though we are kind of friendly to China. And the trouble with that is China doesn't give a damn.
What do you say to that, Alex Chalk?
Well, I think, look, the position of the British government is very consistent with what other G7 nations are doing, whether that's France, whether that's Germany, which is to recognise that there has to be some engagement. Now, Ian Duncan-Smith's making really very fair points about the nature of the Chinese regime, and we absolutely have our eyes open. My goodness, we have concerns about human rights matters, we have concerns about the international rules-based order. But you know what? We have to have those relationships also, by the way, relationships with those people in the region. So India, for example, I was previously the Minister for Defence Procurement, and I was out there in India speaking to our counterparts. And I think if we were to completely disengage with China, we would potentially also be losing the opportunity to build relations with like-minded nations like India in the region. So this is part of a balanced, sensible, calibrated approach which James Cleverly has been referring to. And as I say, we can't wish China away. What happens there is going to affect us here, whether it's the climate or whether it's the economy. And I think we've got to get our points across, and we've got to stand up for our values.
And this changes nothing.
Well, I think it's too soon. It's too soon to say, because we don't know all the facts. We don't know all the facts about this individual, what he's alleged to have done, who he's alleged to have spoken to. And I think in the interests of balance, we should proceed with caution, taking it extremely seriously, as we always do. But you've got to take it in stages.
I'd love to talk more about China, but we have to move on. You asked Wandsworth Prison for an update on Daniel Khalife by the end of the week. That is, of course, today. What's the latest you can share with us on how he escaped and what the prison is doing to urgently improve?
Yeah, well, he has been caught, and I'm very grateful to the Metropolitan Police. I spoke to the Metropolitan Police just yesterday to thank them personally. But that means that, of course, there's a process, and that he, who knows, he might get charged, he may stand trial, and we don't want to prejudice that. But what I can share is that having kicked off those initial investigations, first that the relevant protocols, security protocols, were in place. In other words, protocols about ensuring that there is a physical head count before the call goes to the control room in advance. Hang on, I'm just going to come to that. The second thing is that the staff were in place. The key point, which is the one that you referred to, is were those protocols followed? And that is what the investigation will conclude. And I want to make this point is because this is so important, because this is so significant, I've asked for an independent investigation as well, so that we absolutely get to the bottom of it. But I do just also want to make the point, these are very, very rare incidents, and incidentally much, much rarer than in the past.
Well,
that's why we take it so seriously and we want to get to the bottom of it.
Can I just jump in there? Because it's not that rare. A prisoner did escape Wandsworth prison, the same prison in 2019, in almost exactly the same way. So it's not rare. Wandsworth has had this happen before. They failed previously. Is it now time for the prison governor to go?
Well, so to put it in context, so there are about 87,000 people in custody. There are.
I'm talking about one prison. I'm just talking about this one prison.
I'm just coming to Wandsworth. In Wandsworth, there are probably about 10,000 or tens of thousands of movements in that period. But the reason why we take it so seriously in terms of what's specifically happening in Wandsworth, that's why I've asked for an additional governor resource to go down. The prison service has arranged for an additional governor resource to go down. That's somebody who has previously been a governor, but also has specific security expertise. Also, out of an abundance of caution, have transferred out around 40 prisoners to other parts of the estate, because we want to get to the bottom of precisely what is going on in that particular prison. So yes, we are looking at it very carefully, and there is an exhaustive inquiry which is underway at the moment, and additional broader resource in that prison. But you're of course right to make that point. But if you look at the position, so in the last 13 years there've been around 20. In the 13 years before that, there are around 170 escapes. So they are much more secure than they've ever been, and that's why we take it so seriously.
One of the questions here has been staffing issues at Wandsworth. There is a similar picture across the prison estate. Because of this, lots of inmates are kept inside their cells for 22, 23 hours a day, which actually can make violence worse. Is that the way it should be, do you think?
We absolutely want to have safe, decent rehabilitative regimes, and that means getting people out of their prisons and doing productive activities. And what we are doing is there have been issues of crowding, there have been issues of people spending too long on lockup for decades. The difference is we are investing billions. This is the biggest program of investment since the Victorian era to increase the quantity of cells, but also the quality as well. And that's why if you go to somewhere like HMP Berwyn in North Wales, or you go to Fossway or Five Wells, you will see a prison which is night and day compared to the Victorian prisons that you think of in your mind's eye.
Forgive me.
So, warehouses, workshops. Sorry, please go on.
I was going to say, forgive me, we don't have very much time. You're talking about new prisons, but of course, many of them are old. And in fact, reoffending costs this country £18 billion a year. But I want to ask you about one specific issue, which is shoplifting. It's risen by 27% nationally this year. Shocking piece in the Sunday Times today about one store where open looting style shoplifting is essentially taking place. You've promised tougher sentences. It's not deterring people. I mean, we don't even have the space to lock these people up. The government just can't solve these problems, can it?
Well, can I just, because you rightly made the point about reoffending, about 18 billion, and that's why in those other prisons there is so much good work going on to get people into jobs, because if they get into jobs they are 9% less likely to commit offences. And it's worth knowing, in the interest of balance, that in the last year or so the percentage of offenders in work 6 months post-release has doubled. So there is a lot of hugely important good work taking place across our prisons, and we shouldn't lose that point. Now, to your issue about shoplifting, we have now more police officers in our country than at any time in our history, and that is important because that means you provide the resource to take these relevant steps. Now, there will be independent operational decisions about what police response, but the point is we are investing in the courts. That's to say we've got 1,000 more judges, up to £141 million more going into legal aid, so that legal aid barristers and solicitors can do their very important job ensuring that the guilty are convicted, the innocent walk free, and the public are protected. So we are putting the resources in because we are absolutely determined that the public should be safe and justice should be done.
But you can't guarantee that you'll lock up all these repeat offenders who are shoplifting. I mean, at the moment, you have a 3 strikes and you're out knife crime policy, but you don't even lock up everybody who offends 3 times with a knife. You cannot possibly promise to lock up shoplifters.
Sorry. It's really important to be clear. The independent courts decide on the basis of the material before them what is the correct disposal in any particular case. So they may say, right, this case requires a non-custodial penalty. They may say, no, do you know what? He breached his non-custodial penalty. The time has come for a custodial penalty. It's very important that politicians don't interfere in the specifics of individual sentencing decisions. But we are very focused on bringing on this additional supply. £4 billion, like as I said, I could talk about Fossway, Five Wells, HMP Millsike, and the full site. This is a very modern, state-of-the-art prison, all being run on electric, no gas, etc. Rehabilitative, fantastic prison. But we're investing in existing prisons. So Wandsworth, which you referred to, is having £9 million invested into it in terms of additional measures. But also, I could point to Birmingham. I could point to Liverpool, which are also getting that investment as well. So it's all part of a general package of investing in law and order.
Many people who are concerned about the way the justice system is run at the minute are deeply, deeply worried that it's been a year since we had a victims commissioner. Why is that post still vacant?
So I'm the new Justice Secretary, and it's right that I should consider the candidates, and I've done that, and I expect to be able to make an announcement on that shortly.
Mr. Chalk, I think you're the 11th Lord Chancellor under this government. Do you accept that, although you're talking about the good things which the government is now doing, that the state of the criminal justice system and indeed the courts is the responsibility of the Conservatives who've been in power since 2010, and that perhaps the big turnover, the churn in the number of justice secretaries just shows that historically Conservative governments just haven't taken the job seriously?
Well, no, I don't think that. I think the role of Justice Secretary is incredibly important. We are a nation of laws. We're a rule of law.
But if it's so important, why do you change it once a year on average?
Well, look, I mean, there has been, I think it's perfectly clear, there's been a volatile period in British history, but there is a real sense of purpose and stability on this issue of investment. As I say, if we're stepping back from us for a second, issues involving the prison service, which people are rightly talking about, by the way, issues of crowding, those have been with us for decades. They really have. If you look at Wandsworth, if you were to Google, these sorts of conversations 20 years ago, the difference is we are
but
doing
you haven't made it
something
better.
about
That's the point.
And that, but that's not. But that's where I think it's really important to have a measure about. There have been a problem in Wandsworth, and we're looking into it. I totally get that. But come with me to HMP Fossway, and what you would see there, for example, is incredible workshops where prisoners learn how to do joinery or woodwork, or they do. But honestly, it's incredibly moving, and it's impressive, and there is excellent work taking place. And so all I'm saying is that in the interest of balance, whilst recognising there is an issue here, which we are absolutely on, it's also
and which is on you, which is on the Conservative government.
So again, and that's fine. But I'm just saying that there's a lot of very, very good stuff that has happened.
Okay, thank you very much indeed.
Justice Secretary Alex Chalk there.